Well, this subscriber says, I've been painting in oils for about a year. I do pretty well, except that when I make dark colors lighter, they get muddy looking. How do you make dark colors lighter without making them look muddy? Yeah, we can fix that one. Well, there are a lot of people that think that you have to buy special colors or special mixtures of white or whatever to keep your dark colors from being muddy when you make them lighter. But there's something that you can do that can prevent you from having to buy anything new. And that is simply to know what the colors will do and what colors you need to make them lighter without getting muddy. All right, so I think I got that one out. First of all, to know what hues are in your tube colors. Now, people resist that. So many people will just paint by the tube color, knowing that if you mix ultramarine blue into burnt umber, you're going to get a neutral or a gray and stuff like that. Well, that's the way I was brought up too, and I even talked that way for a while before I became aware that what's causing that to happen is the hues in the color. So we can use that same system of thinking to keep our colors from getting muddy when we get them lighter. Let me show you one. Now, typically, let's do a little illustrating here. Typically, the colors that will get muddy when you try to add white to them will be the warm colors on the color wheel. The cool colors don't really have that problem so much. Well, the closer colors are to blue. The closer the cool colors are to blue, the less of a problem. And let me just show you that first. Let's see, I'll just pull some ultramarine blue over here. And let's see, I'll just put it right here. Now, ultramarine blue by itself, without being mixed, is really quite dark. I need to get enough paint in there. Really quite dark, you see. And now, if I pull that out and just scrub it out, you can see the hue the ultramarine blue is. All right. Now, if we add white to that to raise the value, let's pull some white down here so that we can work it. Just add white to that. And let's see, let's get it just sort of not real light. Here, right here. You see, that raises the value pretty well without really getting muddy. Now, if you're working with a blue-green, let's go back up. Let's go in a different direction. If you're working with, say, a green or even a blue-green, and then you got to think about the thing, because green has yellow in it. So there's your key. Colors that have yellow in them are going to need a little help for you to raise their value and keep them similar to that color, keep them looking natural without getting muddy. So let me show you how that works. So I'm going to start out here with a green that is close to green, very, very dark here. You see how very, very dark that is coming out of the tube. Now this is the Rembrandt sap green, and it does tend to lean just a little bit cooler than we would expect a sap green to. So if we want to show the green lighter, you're using that, but you want to show the green lighter, but you want to show it lighter like a summer grass or something like that. Well, you look at the green and you see you need more yellow in it. You need more yellow in it as well as white in order to get that the value raised and the color lighter without it going blue. Now let's do first of all, what happens And that color, if we add, I need to rinse the brush. I certainly don't want to influence that color with another color. So let's just rinse the brush here and give it a good drying. All right, now we can cook with propane. So let's look first of all what white does to that green, that particular green, just by adding white to it. Let's get it lighter, but enough for you to see. You see what happens here? It begins to get kind of chalky, kind of blue. Now, if that's the color you want, if that's the hue or that you're working with the color you want, then that's fine. But if you're not pleased and you want to raise that value without it turning chalky, let's try something like this. In addition to adding white to it, let's also add yellow. So if I just pull some yellow over here, maybe just a little bit more white, look at the difference. Now I'll try to get that same value. Let's put just a little bit more yellow. I'll try to get that same value. Now that's because there's this characteristic in paint, oil paint, and in an acrylic, in paints that require adding white to make them lighter. Now watercolor doesn't. Watercolor doesn't have this problem because watercolor uses the water, more water with the white paper coming through to make it lighter. But that's not true for oils and for acrylics. All right, so if we then take the one with the yellow in it, let's get it right over in here, and let's get that same value, and I'll show you the difference. Well, that's lighter, but you can see there, that's yellow. Let's get that a little darker. You can see there, it looks more like green, green going towards yellow, like it would in the sunlight of grass. Put just a little bit more of that in it. So this will show it right here. Let's put a little bit of this right down here. Can you see the difference between those? If we add just a touch more yellow into that, let's put it right here. Can you see the difference there? There we go. That's now you see just by adding a little bit of yellow, we lift it up. We lift the yellow into it. What happens with these colors, I almost said didn't quite get out. With the dark colors that have yellow in them, in oil and in acrylic, when you add white, it cancels the yellow out. So that's the reason they tend to go muddy. It cancels yellow out. Now, yellow can be the answer, adding yellow and white, and you find the proportions of yellow and white by trial and error pretty much. Just by adjusting, you get used to how much it takes, and then you'll be able to do it all the time. So the colors that have the yellow in them, then that is the answer. When you get over into colors that have both yellow and red in them, you may have to do something else, a little bit of something else. And so the one color that a lot of people use, I haven't used it in decades, is burnt umber. And burnt umber, let's pull it out right here. Of course, very, very dark. And I think of burnt umber, it's an earth color. I think of it as a convenience color. I never use it because I mix my own, and that is in other quick tips and other teachings that I do too. But if you add white to burnt umber, let's just get some more white over here, like this. If you add white to burnt umber by itself to raise the value, let's get that into about a middle value. This is what you get. See, it begins to look more chocolatey. And the more white you add to it, the more of this you get. Now, burnt umber depending on the brand, brands of burnt umber vary. But burnt umber is really a red-orange, and this burnt umber leads a little bit more towards red than it does orange. That suggests that in addition to white, we need to add a little bit of red-orange to it that's more saturated. Now this is red-orange, about as desaturated as you can get. So you want to raise the value. If you want to raise the value, then you want to show more saturation. So to do that, I add just a little bit. This is cadmium red light. It's a red-orange. Now, it may be that I need to add just a little bit of this yellow-orange as well to adjust that red-orange to be a little less red than cadmium oranges. There it is right there. All right, and let's look at what happens to our mixture when we add that in addition to white. So you see it just come alive. There we go, right there. There it is. Can you see the difference? You see the color remaining. This looks more like a lighter version of this than this does. This just gets more, it feels like it's getting more neutral. And this feels more, as the viewer said, this feels more muddy. Now, and there are cases when this would be what you need, but just for raising the value of that color, that's what you would do. And so I'm going to do just two more for you. And the way to think about this is, as I said earlier, locate the color on the color wheel. In this particular color wheel, I've done something extra to. I've put at the top of each of these colors, I've put the two primaries, or single primary, that create that color. And I've added an extra primary if the color leans a little bit more towards a primary. For example, say we know that blue plus red equals violet. We'll create violet. But a red-violet has more red in it. Red's a primary, so I put two little dots there. And that's just to remind us of what hues are actually in all the colors on the color wheel. Now, these earth colors are really the combinations of complementaries, those colors that are opposite each other on the traditional wheel. So that's why I don't have this on my palettes, because I can create it. But if you have it on your palette and you use burnt umber and you've had that problem, now you know. Burnt umber being a red-orange, right in here somewhere, but desaturated, means when you add white to it, you need to put more of that red and the yellow back into it. In other words, you put more of what it's made of back into it. And because those are warm colors, that then enlivens it up so that you can get a progression as you move from dark to light. Another one that's in that same range is the burnt sienna. Now, let me rinse off my brush again, be sure I've got all that burnt umber. Burnt sienna has a little more orange in it. It leans a little bit more towards orange than burnt umber does. And it too is an earth color. It too is a very saturated color. And and there's another thing, is that it too will be different. The hues will be different according to the manufacturer. And this is this is Winsor Newton's version right here of burnt sienna. You see, it's very much the same value, maybe a tiny bit lighter, but you can see more orange in it. But if you add white to burnt sienna, this time I'm going to do this a little bit different. Just reach over here into the white. If you add white to burnt sienna, let's move it to about middle value, like we did the others. And you can see here it begins to turn more towards red. If you add a little more white to it, did I say burnt sienna? I hope I did. This is burnt sienna we're working with right here. Add a little more white to it, and it begins to get more what you might call pinky. You see, it loses its characteristic. So what we'll do the same thing And not just adding a little bit of yellow, but adding more of what it's made of. And burnt sienna, add light burnt umber, being a red, orange. These are the two colors it's made of, the two primaries it's made of. So that means we need to add saturated versions of those two. And usually those saturated versions of the light colors the saturated version of the warm colors are light as they come out of the tube. And so you can have those available on your palette and know which ones to reach for to help you to get a color lighter. So let me show you what happens there. So I'm going to pull the orange over. I'll just do this a little bit more methodically. Pull the orange over. Let's put a little. This cadmium red light is a very strong tinting strength, so it really does require very little of it mixed into the yellow orange to make it more orange or more red orange. Now some people will say that burnt sienna is a saturated version of orange, and some are. Some tubes of burnt sienna are, but this one happens to be just a little bit redder. This is as I said, the Winsor Newton version. Happens to be a little bit redder, so I'm going to add just a little bit more red. It's not quite as red orange. Red orange can lean more towards the orange, or it can lean more towards the red and still be red orange. So let's see what that will do now. So we'll go back to our lighter version. I'm going to do these two values of this one, and let's put a little bit of that in it. Just mix a little bit of that into it. I'll show you how it livens it up. We'll just compare it right there. Can you see? See how that livens it up? Now if we wanted it to lean a little bit more towards red than orange, then you add more red to it. Depends on what your painting is calling for as to which way you go there. And of course that is true with all the ones that require either a primary or a tertiary to raise its value. The primary, secondary, tertiary, I should say. Right, I'm going to get that just a little bit redder. Now, I'll come over and let's go start back here with that new version. All right, and then we'll put a little bit of the burnt sienna into that. A little bit more. There we go. Now I'm adding the red orange back in. And what do we have? Okay, we have that. Now, that doesn't seem a whole lot different. Let me just go up here and add a little bit from this pile. So, you can see there's not a rule here about how much or how little. There we go. You see that begins to put that life back into that burnt sienna. And I can go back up the value scale with that one, back down the value scale with that one. And you can see it just puts life right back into the color. Okay. So, let's get that a little bit more blended. So you see the difference now between these and this. These come alive. These feel like they have color in them. These begin to go kind of dead. But as I said before, there might be times when this would be what you would need. So there's those. Now there's one other one I want to show you because I think it's one that would give you an extreme version. And that is Alizarin Crimson. Or these days, I think the color's being called Alizarin Crimson Permanent or Alizarin Permanent, same thing. So let's see. Here is Alizarin. Let's see. Let's put that Alizarin right up here. There's Alizarin. You see, it's rich dark. It's one color that artists have totally fallen in love with over the centuries. Since it was first discovered. When we add white to alizarin, come right over here and pick up some more white. Right here. Okay, when we add white to alizarin, it goes more pink. You see that? Really it begins to sort of lose a little bit of its brilliance. And once again, that might be what you need, but if you want to raise the value and keep a little bit more of that life of the color in it, then add a little bit of cadmium red light, or what would be, it is a red orange, but alizarin does tend to be a tiny bit desaturated, not very much, depending on the brand. There we go again. So let's put a little bit of this in it now to show you the difference. See the difference? See how that one feels so much more alive as far as color goes. Let's raise it, get a little more of raise the value just a little bit more with the white, and you can see how that just throws the color right back into it. So you learn these things and you'll find that your paintings will just come alive. You won't have that problem anymore. You can do this yourself with a regular color wheel. Just indicate which of the primaries these colors are made of, just to remind yourself, or you could memorize it, and put more on the tertiaries. Put the primary, 2 parts at least of the primary that the color has more of. And then when you have a color that you want to raise the value of and it goes muddy on you, go back to your color wheel, identify its hue. What would that color, any of these, fall on the wheel, and then look at what's in it. Look at what colors it's made of. So for example, if it were dark, well, you saw me do it, so I won't go through that again. So there it is. I think you'll find that will solve a lot of problems for you. Just take that little extra step and add a little white, a little warmth to your whites. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com, where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.